Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. How
It's
are
Monday. It's Monday.
we? The end of Monday.
Yes.
Tell you what, I'm an hour ahead of everyone, and it's good.
It's all right for those of us who've moved to Paris.
The 8 o'clock has been good.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I'm sitting in my front room with my front door immediately behind my head, just so I don't get kicked off the show. So we're all having an interesting evening. You're slightly more.
We broadcast from anywhere for you.
International awkward front rooms. Yeah.
How has your Monday been? Oh, it's first day back after half term. Interesting.
Yep. First day back. I had 1.5 free periods that I did not anticipate I would have because year 11s were in exams.
Wow.
So that was nice. Well, I knew it was happening, but I wouldn't normally have that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was okay. But everyone was kind of just walking around with this gormless look on their face, like,
Oh no.
why? What's happening? Where am I? What's going on? Because 1 week is not sufficient.
No, never is. Never. 'Cause
No.
you still need a few days to work, I think. And then you need it's just never enough.
No. The dread sets back in too quickly, I think.
Yeah,
Like I didn't sleep this weekend pretty much at all. Not because I was consciously worried. There was nothing specific. I had no reason to. It was just anxiety, just like subconscious anxiety. I couldn't sleep Saturday, I couldn't sleep Sunday.
Yeah.
So I haven't really slept. So that's how my Monday's been.
Well, you got the Sunday scaries.
Yeah. I got the whole weekend scaries. Not a great end to a supposed holiday, but that's just usually, unfortunately, how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The exam season. Here is it like mock early? No?
Yeah. So we've got the year 11s have their final round of big, like these are the big mock exams basically.
Mm-hmm.
That are supposed to tell us a whole lot, but don't actually tell us as much as we want them to, because either we're not doing all of the papers, because that almost killed everybody last term when we had to mark all the papers, or we haven't covered enough content. And this is true for all subjects. You always feel like you're supposed to be testing them, but you haven't covered everything. So the papers are either incomplete or amended, or the kids can't do them. And it's like, you do have this feeling of why are we weighing the pig that's not ready to be weighed?
Happens a lot in teaching, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, but in maths a lot, actually. I don't know in high school, but like primary maths, it's like, here's a maths test, but don't worry about question 6 and question 4 because we haven't done that yet. Why am I doing it to them?
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So we're doing Romeo and most classes are doing Romeo and Juliet, and some are doing Macbeth, but no one's finished the plays. Like no one, they haven't done the whole thing because we're in the middle of all of them. Yeah. So when they do their literature paper,
oh god,
it's all just, we're going to mark it as if this is all you could have said up to Act 3, scene whatever. It's just a bit. Is this realistic? Is this valid? Is this does this have any sort of significance? statistically.
Is it?
I don't know. It's useful for us as teachers. I just don't know how useful grades are in terms of predicting. I don't think it's any more useful than just like a less stressful test would have been. But then I guess part of the whole mock process is that so students have been through that process before and they almost become kind of, I know there are a lot of arguments against kind of over scarily testing students and doing too many mocks and increasing anxiety, but I guess the exposure of it and the experience of it is supposed to make it more familiar so students know the routine and they don't stress.
Yeah.
Which I agree with. I think that works for most kids, to be honest.
I have a friend who teaches in Scotland, and they do testing, but they don't do any practice. Whereas in England, like SATs practice, when I've been in year 6 anyway, has been like quite a big thing, you know? Like every time all the other year groups are doing end of unit tests, it's like, and year 6 do SATs.
Oh,
But she said they did terribly in the tests because they'd never done it before, seen it before. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, there is something to be said for experiencing it in practice, I guess, before you do it for
the lining up in the exam hall and the sitting in silence and the you spoke, you're disqualified, all of that.
Hardest part. That's the point of my class. When I was reading a story, I'm like, this is the easiest part of your day. Just listen. But they can't. They couldn't.
I find that so frustrating. So frustrating.
Exams? No, I would never have talked in my exam hall. I was scared to look up from my desk.
I know. I was so terrified of doing anything that would possibly jeopardize.
I need to stretch my neck.
Yeah. I remember going into those things, and I didn't have big exam halls. We did ours in classrooms. Obviously, all the like displays and anything was taken off the walls or covered up.
Yeah.
And it was, rows of desks and really strict silence, but it wasn't the big exam hall. I don't think. Maybe some of them were, but some of them definitely were not. Because the ones I remember quite clearly, I'm sitting in a classroom, terrified to even like turn any part of my body in a way that someone would accuse me of anything I hadn't done. Like, I was so paranoid of unfairly jeopardizing my academic success. Yeah. But these kids, man.
That's the hardest part. Like, this is how you sit an exam. Don't talk. No, seriously, don't talk. Just to let you know, we do try and practice that in primary school. It's difficult.
Yeah. It's just choices, though, isn't it? For 99% of them, they just don't.
Yeah.
It's like or maybe it's just that I have an underdeveloped brain because I'm 16 and
I agree. It's like
technically an idiot. I just don't think it'll happen. Like, I don't think that would happen to me. Like, maybe it's just that attitude. I don't know. But they just,
I think it's like
some of them are not serious.
It's not is it difficult? I don't know. I made the right choices in primary school. I try and make the right choices in high school. I don't think it's difficult.
No, I made a lot of deliberately bad choices, but not anything that I knew was gonna mess up my, my future of getting into the university I wanted to get into. But that's because those were my aspirations, and that's what I actually wanted for myself.
You're like, it's like you knew.
Yeah,
that's the difference now. I feel like is like, why are they making wrong decisions? Let's find out what happened to them 10.5 years ago that caused them to be like this. And it's like, okay, sometimes there is a root and a cause, but sometimes don't humans just sometimes make a bad decision? There's not a whole trail of history behind it. Like, I'm all up for understanding the child, and I'm like very into it and very interested by it, very intrigued. But I feel like sometimes they are children and they just make the wrong decision sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're listening, please, like, don't kill me. For my
no, I feel like you can't say anything. Oh my gosh. Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. I sound like you can't say anything in this country without the woke shutting you down. But honestly, I feel like sometimes stating the obvious gets you in a lot of trouble. Like, humans make a lot of bad choices, and the younger the human is, the more bad choices that human makes. Even when that young human has not experienced any trauma. Like those are facts. Like I don't know why that's so.
Well, because like how do you learn if you don't push the boundaries, or you don't? And like sometimes, especially like even at work, they're like, "Why did you do that way?" Like, well, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to do it. Yeah. So we used to have people progress at my very first school, and they'd be like, "Why haven't they made progress?" I'm like, "I don't know, because they're 6."
Yeah.
Because he's 6, I know. I tried. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. And then I guess the older ones, like in secondary, we have the whole they're young, they have young brains thing. But they also have all of these, like, I mean, not to say that 6-year-olds can't make deliberate choices, because I've watched 6-year-olds stare me in the eye while doing something that they know is gonna get a reaction. But a 16-year-old will make a whole lot more deliberate choices for peer approval or winding up the authority figure or whatever. And again, even when they haven't been traumatized, it happens.
Is that not like one of the hardest things to do? To see out of the corner of your eye a child who's totally trying to get your attention and doing something, and just to not look. It's very difficult.
I'm pretty good at it though. I'm very good at deliberately ignoring people.
Amazing.
It's actually a skill.
100%.
To the point that it becomes a bit of a joke sometimes in the classroom. Like the kids will be doing something that is so brazen, and I'm just like continuing on this completely normal, absolutely normal conversation or explanation with the kid like 2 seats away. And this whole the whole class will be watching it like it's some ridiculous pantomime. It's I love ignoring them. any and all opportunities.
I can see you're a seasoned professional with be a teacher standard.
Tactical ignoring.
6.2. It's difficult. And some of these kids have staying power. I'm telling you, in primary school, they got staying power. You know they're looking at you, and it's like, don't look. And like 3/4 of my brain capacity is taken up with like, don't look. Keep teaching. Keep teaching.
The staring. Yeah. What I do find difficult is like, because it's weird, because in day-to-day life, I'm not big on eye contact. Like when I'm explaining stuff, even when I'm explaining things to a group of people, like to a class, unless there are specific kids I'm directing the explanation at, in which case it's not I'm talking to them or the group of them or looking at them periodically. But generally speaking, if I'm lost in my own explanation, I'm like staring kind of up at the back of the room. Like I don't look at people. I don't look at people when I talk to them. I don't look at people when I pass them by. I'm not good with eye contact. But when a kid is staring at me and I can feel their eyes burning into my flesh, and I know that kid is staring at me, waiting for me to look at them, waiting for me to make eye contact. It's like I can't look away. I can't not look. That's the one thing I can't do. The one thing I can't ignore is the eyes boring into my soul. Like it's just like a magnet. And I'm like, no. It's like the crazy person on the street. That was really insensitive. But you see a person that's a little bit like too drunk or a little bit like potentially aggressive, and you're like, do not engage with this person. Redirect eye contact. I can't not look. I always end up like staring into their soul. Can't do it. It's the only thing I can't ignore.
Really?
Yeah. It's a problem.
I
need to work on that. But anyway, ignoring kids is fun. The end. Next topic.
The end.
What are we actually meant to be talking about?
We're going to talk
revision.
About skills to teach children. Not facts. Skills, not knowledge. Skills.
Revision skills.
Do you have a knowledge organizer for tonight?
No,
Because
because I'm drowning in them at work. There's one for every unit, for every class. And it's really useful, but we just introduced them and we're trying to adapt and get used to the system. And there's paper everywhere. Leanne, there's paper everywhere.
I was like, they're really useful. And I just think in 5 years' time, be something different.
Yeah.
Like,
But it'll come back around again in another 5 years.
Everything does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wanted to talk about study leave and the what?
Revision.
And long term. And then I was like, well, let's talk about long term memory because unfortunately, there is no study leave in primary school.
Well, there isn't really in secondary anymore if it makes you feel better. That was my whole.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. Did I have? Like I said to you, I looked at my high school's offered report.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was my high school many years ago. And like one of the comments was like, children need to be taught how to revise. I was like, yeah. I didn't know I didn't really know how to, like, how do you make facts stick in your brain?
Okay, so this is interesting because we're coming at this not only from different key stages and different perspectives that way as teachers, but we've clearly had very different experiences as students. Because I remember for when I must have been in grade 2 or grade 2 or 3, Kingston or Ottawa, anyway, somewhere in Canada, and we had spelling tests, and I remember my parents like testing me on it, and they give me advice for like how to learn the words, like look at it, say it out loud, cover it, write it down, check it. If it was a problem, like if it was right, tick it, go back to it every so often, just make sure you still got it, but move on. If it was wrong, like circle the problem, come back to it again in the second round. Like they taught me how to do that with spelling tests, but I don't remember. And I guess if I ever, because I grew up functionally as an only child in that household. So it was just my parents to help me with like testing. And if I asked them to test me on stuff or whatever, and my mother was around, she would. But it's at no point did they help me with any other study skills. And I cannot remember a single moment in my formal education where I was taught how to revise or how to study. I genuinely do not recall ever being taught that. But Lianne, I figured it out. I just did it. And I think a lot of my approach to it came from my parents going through learning the spellings with me and like how did that process, because I had a whole system by the time I got to my exams in year 13. I had this whole system where I'd like write out all the notes, and then I'd copy things by hand, and then I'd highlight anything I didn't remember, and then I'd put a star next to stuff I still didn't remember, and then I'd consolidate it into a smaller book, and I just like, and it was a combination of I don't know. I just figured it out, and I guess it was kind of based on those early experiences, but no one ever taught me how to do it. I just developed a system that worked for me, and I just did it. So it was one of those things becoming a teacher where I'd look around and be like, how have you not figured this out? Like, how long have you been doing this? Like, I really, really, really struggled to understand how you get to 14, 15, 16 and still need to be taught how to commit stuff to memory. It was one of those things that we sometimes experience as teachers, even as teachers, we're like, how the hell are you having trouble with this? Like, you know, those moments where you're just so frustrated. And I regularly have those moments with things like revision because it just blows my mind how they don't have a clue.
Yeah. But then, like, you know, like JBL said, children need to learn how to study. And I was thinking from like a primary perspective, you know, especially early years, we teach them how to play, and we teach them how to manage emotions, and we teach them how to collaborate with other children. So if we're teaching those skills to the little ones, why are we not teaching these skills to the older ones?
Yeah.
And then there's also like the drive to want to revise as well. So you're like fighting with that as well, I feel like.
I think that's the bigger problem, if I'm honest.
Yeah. For like, if you have the drive to do it, you're gonna want to figure out what works best for you. but that takes a lot of like self motivation, I guess.
And also,
Yeah.
a lot of times when students say, they say something that basically means I'm overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. Like there's all this information, all these different places. Quite often I'm like, that's because your book is a mess. That's because you don't have any of the booklets or the papers or anything that I told you to keep. That's because you haven't organized your notes as you've gone along. Now you've got 500 random sheets of paper. You don't even know what they mean or what day they were from or what lesson they go with. You didn't keep on top of note taking and everything. So it's all scribbles. It doesn't make sense. Like, and I do teach them note taking skills. I'm very like, I build that into like from year 7. This is how you note down key information and this is how you organize it, because they don't organize their stuff as they go. And then it gets to a point where they don't even know where the information is in their stuff, let alone what to do with it. And I think that's a huge, huge problem. They don't realize the significance of what they're doing as they're doing it and keeping it organized and keeping it neat. And then it's really, really hard to come back from that.
Yeah. But again, that's like the want to, I don't know, is there a bit of like maturity within that? Like, I'm doing this now so that in like 7 months' time, when I do my exam, I have stuff to look back on.
Yeah. They'd rather just have the instant gratification of not caring and messing around.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's the whole thing these days of like, I sound like an old lady. The youth these days want
kids these days. They don't take it seriously. No, they don't though.
These younger teenagers. Google gives it to them straight away. Whereas if you're revising, it takes time.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and they don't see the value. They think like, why do I have to write this down? I can just get ChatGPT to tell me the answer.
It's like Google made it difficult. ChatGPT makes it even harder. Like, why do I need a long-term memory if I have the internet? That's why I was like, long-term memory is like it's going to be a big problem, I feel like, for a high school.
Yeah.
Especially for you, like,
haven't,
in English. Are you allowed to take the text into an English exam?
No.
Really?
Not a GCSE.
Wow. This is going to become harder and harder, like, to teach kids. How are you supposed to remember all the quotes?
They can't. That's the single worst thing.
Is that a new thing?
Sorry?
Is that a new thing? I feel like I took my text in with me.
Yeah. It changed between you and them. Yeah.
Mean.
It is mean, but at the same time, they were never expected to have memorized 500 pages of plays and stories. It was always, and it kind of reduces the faff. So many students would spend ages looking for it. Like, you know what you need to know about it, and you memorize a couple key quotations. And at GCSE, if you're slightly off by a couple words or you don't even have the exact quote, as long as you're not trying to analyze language that isn't in the original text, as long as you're not doing that, you're going to get a lot of credit for things. So it's not. And then you think about all the information that history has to remember, which is like knowledge and skills as well.
Yeah, and dates.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not not that much when you look at what other subjects actually have to do, what they have to remember for those different subjects. It's not that much at all.
It's interesting you said that about like flicking through a book, a Shakespeare script, and being like, where's the page? Where is it? And my mum actually is always like, a multiple choice exam can be harder and especially if it's like open book, because with an open book you're like, oh my god, where's the answer? Whereas if you use your like long-term memory retention skills and it's like stuck in your brain, and you can just like, it's easier to find it in your brain than it is to find it in a book.
Oh yeah.
Also, exam desks are tiny, right? Where do you like, that's another thing, like, where do you put everything?
Yeah, I mean, I went through one of the papers that my year 12 English lit class is going to have to do next year. One of them just went, so we have to have this booklet, and we have to have the paper we're writing our answers on, and we have to have 3 different books on our desk. It's like,
Wow.
where's this going to fit? How is this going to fit on those exam desks? Where's this going to go? And I was like,
That's tough.
dunno. Good luck. Have fun.
That seems like let's draw a map of our exam desk.
Yeah, it is a bit chaotic. That's my cat.
No dreams. Terrible idea.
He's still going. Okay.
Well, JBL's had a lot of comments tonight. Where are we?
Why don't you share some of those, because I have to just stop my cats from killing each other. I'll be right back.
Okay. On that note, I shall tell you about our sponsors. So, well, good place to stop and talk about John Cat. So, our show is brought to you in partnership with John Cat Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources, and they support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So, it's a really great website. Go to it, level up your professional development today. You can visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. We also have a code for you guys to use, so you can get 20% off your order. The code is JCTTR2425, and that will give you, once again, 24%, not 24%, sorry, 20% off your order. That's my long-term memory not working. Because John Cat are great, and they've been with us for a while, so I should remember it's 20%. Also, very exciting, Teachers Talk Connect is happening. Is it this Saturday? Yes, it is.
It is.
It is. Saturday, the 1st of March, is our Teachers Talk Radio. Team will be in Manchester for Teachers Talk Connect. Our biggest free event ever. Yes, it's free, and it's CPD. You can hear from our main stage speakers, including Lee Parkinson, Kate Jones, Vic Goddard. There are loads of subject-specific CPD sessions. What an amazing networking experience. You know, it's like teacher therapy all over the place. Tickets are free, but I think you have to register. Yeah, you've got to register. You can't just turn up. We're very sorry.
Correct.
You need to register. ttradio.org to find out more, and you can get your ticket today. I think your cats need some dojos taken away.
So I'm really sorry. Normally they're usually quite good and separated when we're doing a show, but tonight they've decided to murder each other in the dining room. No one died. It's fine.
Yeah, JBL said, we're going right back to the beginning of our show, basically, but I never did practice tests. I did, however, spend time teaching students how to answer exam questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like primary.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. I guess your
a
exam
lot.
questions are more like essay based, aren't they? Like,
yeah. For literature, yes.
Yeah, that I was taught. I did a point quote analysis. That's all. That's what I remember. Hey, it hasn't changed. Woohoo!
A lot of students use different acronyms that are a bit more complicated, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's all the same thing.
Pedagogy hasn't changed. Wow.
It hasn't.
Guys, you heard it on TTR. Groundbreaking. We found a piece of pedagogy that hasn't changed in about 20 years. Children need to learn how to study. That becomes evident when you ask many teens how they study. I think I just used to go. I used to go buy, the like revision cards.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I'd buy them and I'd feel really good about myself, and I'd come home and I'd be like, I don't know what to do.
We do go through that. So we went through, I think different subjects do it as well. And then there's revision skills in like form and PSHE and stuff in a lot of schools, including mine. We just gave out, the English department just gave out revision card, like flashcards to all of year 11, and like went through different ways you can use flashcards, and kind of made some classes made their students do like actually make some. But it's that kind of, there are some things like, for example, flashcards that are so common and so familiar and have been for so long and are used so widely that they know. And if they don't do it, if they don't try, because we have told them and they have been shown,
Yeah.
That the issue is not that they don't know how to do it. The issue is that they don't care enough, or they don't have the motivation. Maybe a little bit more polite. They don't have the motivation to try and to
Yeah.
see it through. Like not knowing how to do it is not
Yeah.
the biggest barrier in most cases.
Yeah. But this is the problem with it. We talk about a lot that kind of has to come from home, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation, like the want to do. There are some things that I feel like become a very difficult fence to climb over, metaphorically speaking, when the mindset and the attitude is not taught at home and not embedded at home.
Well,
And there's
that's
only
the main
so much,
problem.
right? Yeah, there's only so much you can do in a classroom when you have per se, like possibly a child who is just not that interested.
And hasn't ever been given a reason in their family or their personal life to be interested.
Right.
And there's obviously going to be exceptions to all of this. There were certain subjects I didn't do what I was capable of doing because I didn't care. And they like a kid from the most supportive family is sometimes going to rebel against that, or
Yeah.
switch off in certain situations that don't genuinely interest them. Like I'm not for a second saying that, teaching your kids the value of education or teaching them to be intellectually curious or have a bit of grit and be resilient is going to magically make them a successful student all the time. But like, obviously there's a correlation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a huge problem in a lot of communities is just the total lack of interest or understanding or support from home. And this becomes an even bigger problem when we're talking about things like revision outside of lesson, and should students have study leave and be kind of going off and doing that. And if they don't have the support from home and their parents are ill-equipped to help them navigate that process or support them to discipline themselves to get it done, and the parents haven't instilled that work ethic in their and that aspiration in their child from day dot, then there's literally nothing we can do. And I think that's a huge argument that people use when they're saying that they're using against study leave, saying it'll just, it'll widen the gap between those students. And I mean, I've got a lot to say in response, but it's probably quite true. It probably does.
Yeah. Because you need the self-motivation, but you need the motivation from your parents or your guardian, right?
Yeah, or the support from home, because at the end of the day, they're still, as we said, they're still children. They're still developing these skills. They're still impulsive. They still want that instant gratification. They don't, and they're human beings. So they do need the guidance. 99% of them need that guidance sometimes, at least sometimes, in the home sphere. And a lot of kids are not getting that.
Do you do study leave at your school?
Not really. Haven't had a proper study leave. I haven't experienced a proper year 11 study leave in years and years and years. Probably like a couple years after I started teaching in 2011. A couple years after that, the school I was at changed it so that they stayed a little bit later. I felt like the study leave shortened kind of a little bit every year for a while. And then suddenly they were staying until, or they were coming in at certain times, or they were staying until this. And it got like really bitty for a while. Like certain students would stay here. Others would have to go. And it got really actually quite confusing. Like no one knew who was to be where or who's even on site, which I think is a kind of a concern in itself. And then it just kind of disappeared. And then I went to a different school where it was very much like teach every second up until the last possible second. Actually awful. And then my current school is they don't they're not in favor of any kind of study leave because we have a lot of students who don't have a space at home or who don't have the support from home. But to me, like, yes, that is a lot of students, but we also have a lot of students who do actually have the motivation and would actually appreciate, as I did, the time and the space to just organize themselves, and that they're actually learning less being dragged around from classroom to classroom all day, every day, when they really just need to be eating well, sleeping well, drinking a lot of water, and getting on with their own revision.
Yeah. Well, this is as well for, like, you know, the independent child. Well, each child needs different revision.
Yeah. So it comes down to that, doesn't it? I mean, I worked best, I think, when I had a combination of having a place in school, like a library or somewhere to go, that made teachers and stuff accessible. If I had a question or I needed to find a particular person about something, I could go find them when they were free if I was in that day. But otherwise, I could be left to my own devices with my stuff in the library or whatever it was. A combination of that, and also having a bit of freedom to, like, come in later, or you know,
just breathe.
Breathe and start to learn how to, like, manage myself without having every second of every day run by a bell.
That's true, right? You're sending them
how to navigate that.
You're sending them into A levels, then you're sending them into university. It's like you're not going to have a teacher in front of you every second of the school day. So when do you start preparing them for that? You know, like,
and there were so many there's so many people in my first year of university that really, 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 really struggled to be disciplined and be motivated and not go out, like, every single night of the week and, like, actually stay on top of notes and revise them. And they found this impossibly difficult. And I was like, have you never done this before? And they were like, no. And I was like, oh, well, your school failed you. I've been through this. I know what I'm doing. Carry on.
So preparing.
I managed to have a balance because my high school experience allowed me to figure my stuff out before I went to university and imploded. And we don't do that now. We just hold their hands and we spoon feed and we walk them through everything. We keep them on a lead, and they don't know how to do it on their own and they cannot cope. And then we send them off into the world.
But primary's the same. That's what I said about, like, the pedagogy not changing, but then it just doesn't change. It doesn't change. It just goes backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. Because I feel like primary has become very much, is there a scheme? What do you need a scheme? Like, you're a teacher. Yourself, teach it yourself. And I find it very hard. Like, I debate and I discuss a lot with, like, maths leads, especially because there's a lot of math schemes out there now. I'm like, but sometimes I have to, like, veer off the scheme if you want me to teach the children. They're not robots. I'm not a robot. You know, a massive teacher standard is to adapt and modify. How can you do that if it's like, here's a printed book with
Don't get me started.
It's just terrible. It's just like we're allowing for less and less adaptation, it seems.
It's like that in some secondary schools as well. Thankfully not mine, but some secondary schools are very rigid. Everybody is expected to teach, like, the exact same lesson at the exact same time. And I'm like, adaptability?
Why do you need teachers then? You're not teaching, you're behavior managing, probably. If you're always teaching for a scheme or teaching from teaching from a PowerPoint. We don't adapt and we don't allow for adaptation, and then that comes down to, like you say, the children. But then also you've got, like, are we adapting for the one or for the many? When, you know, like you say, there are children that if you gave them time to go off and study, they would do it in a way that is best for them, and they would be studious and they would be responsible. But then there's, you know, the few maybe that wouldn't. So it's like we adapt for the few, not for the many. I don't know. I have, like, It's like quite a big like thing of mine. Is like, do we change it for the few or we change for the many?
Well, I mean, and again, I feel like my opinions on that would get me crucified. But JBL's just said it might be wiser to let students decide for themselves whether to come to formal revision lessons or not. And it really does seem like, so last year, during what was supposed to be, in civilized societies, a study leave time, but instead we were all teaching our year classes up until the last minute. I posted something on the app that basically said, does anyone remember when students actually went off on study leave? Wasn't that nice? And there were a lot of angry people accusing me of being, classist and exacerbating problems. And I'm just thinking, like, so interestingly, right, this is, I've seen a few posts like this recently as well, people being like, we can't do X because it will widen the gap. And I'm like, okay, so the solution to that is never to hold the high attaining students back. The solution to closing a gap is never to install a ceiling or to pull back the ones that are moving ahead. The answer is never to restrict the top end. How dare you? Is every child not entitled to reach their potential and have an education that suits them? How dare you? So the solution should not automatically be don't do that thing that's going to only advance some people. The solution should be do that thing that, if possible, do that thing that allows those students to advance, but also do something else for other students who need something else. And obviously, practically, that's not... Don't we wish we all had the time and the money and the resources and the classrooms and the staff to do that? So schools have to make practical, hard decisions. But ideally, you have students who, for me anyway, students who could stay home or come in. You have space available, like, for independent study. You have space available for group study, like supervised spaces. So it's not going to get chaotic. It's not going to take taken advantage of. And then you have those revision classes running. And if students want to or need to go to those revision classes, they go there. But we've got to find a way of doing it better than my last school. Because it just, we tried that. This is what I mean by it was like students in different places. And it got to the point where, like, we didn't even know who was on site. So
that kind of comes, I agree with you completely. We know you know your kids. We know our kids. We know who can stay home. We know who needs to come in, but can be left to their own devices, maybe. And then, the kids that need to be in a teacher-led revision group. But it's that I feel like also, like you said, we just didn't know who was in and who's not and what choice they're making. Is that not where the pastoral side of education comes in? And when they make cuts, who are the first staff to go? The pastoral staff.
Pastoral support, TAs.
If teaching is going the way we say it is, with schemes for absolutely for everything and no adaptation, we're going to need those people.
Yeah, well, we need a lot of things we don't have.
So how do you
so much
skills? Because that is like in primary, the big thing in primary with Ofsted is teaching for retention. So it's like let's say history, like I'm teaching you this lesson and I want you to remember it next week. I mean, I'm quite honest with the kids, and I'm like, I'm teaching it to you now, but I want you to remember it tomorrow, and I'm going to ask you tomorrow, and then I want you to remember it next week. It's like, make them aware that I'm teaching it to you, like Tuesday is our history lesson, but actually, I want you to remember it. I don't want to just tell you and then it like passes by your brain. So I feel like in primary, it's like the onus is on the teacher in primary, whereas it shifts in high school where they become adults and actually, the onus should shift. Do you know what I mean? Like, I saw the reaction. I changed the quote. Good shift in high school. It's
Mhm.
like, you know, you're not going to put a 6-year-old to go sit and study, but a 16-year-old, well, yeah, you're about to go to university. You're going to sit exams that will dictate possibly your career. You need to have some accountability for yourself, actually.
Yeah, they do. But that has to be built up. And I think
Yeah, these are all skills. Like,
yeah. So how do I actually teach it? So remember I teach English,
yes.
which is no, it's not actually unique in any sense because we have other skills based, like history is really similar in so many ways. So I don't even know, like quite often I'll be explaining stuff to kids and they'll actually be like, oh yeah, our history teacher told us this, or this is the same thing we do in history, but with a different name. And I'm like, awesome, do the thing you do in history. So there's so much over. I'm like, you know that already? Carry on with that. Thank you, history teacher. Yeah.
If it works, we do it in English.
Yeah. So we have now like knowledge books or knowledge organizers for every single unit. And they're really, really useful if you integrate them in lessons. So the students become really familiar with it and they're familiar with the content and you're referring to it constantly and they see the connections between things and they see the purpose and the meaning of all of this. And it's not just this fat wad of paper that can seem really overwhelming and intimidating. If you just throw it at them and said like, this is everything you need to know, they'd have a heart attack. So like we also have, single sheet knowledge organizers of kind of more selected condensed information that we give them a lot of students before assessments and before exams and stuff, just with key info on it. And so for the booklets and the single sheet knowledge organizers, anything like that, I go through them, like I pull it up on the board and I'm like, this isn't going to work for everybody. This is not going to work for everyone's brain, but it'll probably work for at least a few of you. So I'm going to explain this. I want you to try it, see if it works for you, see if it doesn't. And the first thing I teach them is the method that worked for me when I was younger. And I was like, this is the process I used to follow. And I go through with like the highlighting steps and I go through with the writing out key information. I literally go through the whole however many step process in a lesson. It takes less than that, 10 minutes maybe. And I'm like, this is how I want you to revise for this assessment. And they go off and some of them say it worked really well. Some of them were like, I don't know, I didn't remember, I didn't do very well, blah, blah, blah. But then the next time they get a sheet of paper, I can see them going and like highlighting stuff and doing the same thing that I taught them how to do. So I'm like, you did, you're still, it's fine. It's becoming automatic. That's good. So I start with that just because I think it's a useful, like it incorporates note-taking skills and extracting key information and summarizing and all those things that they need to be able to do with information. So I start with that. And then we move on to other things like we just did with year 11. Here's a recap of how you make flashcards. And here's the things like that. I've sat around with kids, like I've sat there with the guillotine, like making flashcards from like old bits of paper because we didn't have any and they wanted them. And if you make it fun and you make it engaging and teach them how to actually like get the right information on there and make it memorable and like how they can use them to test each other and how it's a little bit less boring than sitting there with a highlighter for some students. So that kind of works as well. I've gone through other different, different ways of manipulating the information, but the important thing is that you reiterate to them. And I think if you kind of model this in lessons, like with interleaving information, bringing past stuff back for like a starter or a quick quiz or like doing the odd lesson on revising a certain topic that you did a couple weeks or last year just to keep it fresh in their brain. If you model that, like recalling things regularly, that more sticks over time, then they start to realize they actually have to do that. The students who are inclined to revise and actually take the initiative will make sure that they're doing that and not just doing, for example, the common thing of focusing on the stuff they get right and revising the stuff they already know because it makes them feel good. They have to do that a little bit, but they have to spend most of their focus on the stuff that they haven't mastered yet and the stuff that they don't actually know. So I'm really open about these things. Like I say this really explicitly. I'm like, the reason we're doing this in this lesson is, or the reason we're doing this today and going back to the other topic tomorrow is because blah, blah, blah. And I explain all this to them. But honestly, the way some year 11s have been, the questions they've been asking and the things they've been saying, I've just been staying there going like, what have I been telling you for the past year and a half? Like, what have you listened? Like, have you? I feel like there's been a lot of leading horses to water recently.
Yeah.
I'm not sure like what else I can do.
Primary is much the same, Like I did division for a long time. Like, why don't you remember it? I explained it yesterday. Why? I shall explain it again.
I could never do that. I couldn't. I'm just imagining the frustration I feel with 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then like shrinking that down.
Shrinking
6-year-olds. Shrinking it down. Because they don't even, they're even less, there's less of a choice. And it's more just, they're just younger. So there's not even anything to be angry at. And I'd feel like a horrible person all the time for being so irritated. It would just be a horrible cycle of misery.
Yeah. No, but like, there are moments where I'm just a bit like, you sat there in the lesson, didn't you hear anything? There is, I feel like there is still some accountability in primary school children, which has to come from home. And if it does, and it's a child that it's like, I know you very well and you actually didn't listen, well, you should have been listening.
Yeah.
Maybe John Catt has a book on this.
Like why 6-year-olds don't listen?
I don't know. How to get 16-year-olds and 6-year-olds to listen. Is it the same? Because we are brought to you by John Catt Educational, and they have fabulous selection of books which can help you with your professional development. You can go to johncattbookshop.com. They have loads of books for any strand of education, whether you're primary, high school, further education. We have a code for you guys. It's JCTTR2425, and you get 20% off your order. And actually, if you look back through some of our shows, which you can find on like wherever you get your podcast, we have a lot of shows where authors have come on and talked about their books. And also, this is the last time we'll be talking about it, because this Saturday is our Teachers Talk Connect event in Manchester. It's free. We've got some amazing speakers, Lee Parkinson, Kate Jones, Vic Goddard. There's also some really great CPD sessions. And I think haven't TTR been putting it? We've been putting it on our Twitter feed, our X feed. Mm-hmm. So you can see like who's coming and which subjects are coming. So, and I don't think it's just like high school specific, because even if it's a high school person talking, you can always take something, from wherever you are. There
are primary speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, I get why Parkinson's primary. Yeah. The tickets are free, so just need to just pop online and register, and you get to see Ray. Yay!
I'll be so tired. So tired. But you're not coming.
I'm not.
Lianne.
I'm in another country.
Not an excuse.
Sorry.
You're forgiven, it's fine.
It's not pink. I'm not in my flat. It's not pink. It's not purple. Nothing sparkles. She's a man.
Give it time.
I did say to him, it's like, yep, I'm teaching reception in France. I was like, eventually things will start to disappear from your flat. Just so you know.
Wait, so how old are these the 6-year-olds?
No, this is 3 and 4-year-olds.
Like 3. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That's why I was confused, because you were talking about 6-year-olds, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. That doesn't line up in my brain. Okay.
I was in year 2.
Right. Okay. Okay, so France is more or less like here, year-wise.
No, because they start like 3. I'm teaching for the most part. It's reception, and they start school earlier. It's there are 3-year-olds in reception. Yes, 3 and 4-year-olds in reception. Very exciting.
Are you going to be changing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm practicing. Good practice.
Okay. It's a whole different world out there in primary, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Oh boy. It's such a different, oh man. I just had a flash. So I've got a really good year 7 class. I actually really, really like them. They're lively and they're mad in a good way. But there was one moment before Christmas where some kid was doing something, just being a child. And I said, I'd never had to shout at these kids or anything before. And I just looked at him and said, do you need to go back to primary school? And I said it in quite a cutting, like, I said it in quite a serious tone.
Yes, I know the caption.
I've never seen a group of kids look so shocked and offended, but also like trying so hard not to laugh at this child before in my life. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that would sting that much. I was like, oh.
In primary, the phrase is, do you need to go back to reception?
Oh.
Yeah. It works both ways.
Yeah. They took that so seriously. I was like, oops. Point was made though. He was fine.
You hit the button.
I hit the button. I did not mean to hit the button, but I hit the button.
That's really funny. I've never heard it said that way.
Whereas primary school is like big school for you.
You need to go back to little school.
Oh dear.
Do you need to? Yeah. I think we covered a revision quite well, people. Thank you. We
did.
Again, comes down to the mindset of the child, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think it's just going to continue being difficult as long as we don't have a million rooms and staff and options and logistical things that we need to do the best for actually every single student. And you're just trying to do the best you can, the greatest good for the greatest number.
Yep.
And something always has to give.
Yeah.
Such is life.
Yeah.
I'm just really tired of, I feel like in certain schools, it's always, I feel like in any given school, right? It's always the same group of children that have to give. And in some schools, that's the SEN students. In some schools, it's the top attainers. In some schools, it's middle kids that slip through the cracks. Yeah. Every school has like specific groups that are always the ones sacrificed. And it just, I don't know how to fix it, but it's so painful.
You can't fix it as one teacher by yourself. I think it's you can't. It has to be a whole school approach. I feel like a lot of the time we're guilty of like, oh, that group, they'll be fine. They can just get on with it. And I'll pop over and check on them in a few minutes, because like you say, you can't, it's very difficult to give of yourself at the same level to 30 children.
You can.
And with revision, everyone probably needs different things. So how? That's where the independence has to kick in, which is what we said a few times tonight. Yeah. Anyway,
we're finishing earlier tonight, so I can go be miserable for a few extra hours before I have to go to sleep.
Yes, sorry. We changed.
I'm used to it being 10 p.m. Now I'm like, I've got like 3 hours of suffering ahead of me.
Oh no! Now you can watch TV. You can bed down and watch TV. That's what I'm gonna do after I make dinner.
I might actually get to sleep early because I haven't slept. So yeah, we'll do that. It'll be fine. Tuesday will be good.
Yeah. Well, we got over Monday. Not we. Sorry, I haven't started teaching yet. You got over Monday. You can do Tuesday. Monday's the worst.
Are
Actually,
you
maybe-
teaching tomorrow?
No, I start next week.
You
It's
have
a
a whole extra week off?
Yeah.
I think we're done here, Lianne. I think it's time to call it. It's 8:31. Some of us have to work in the morning, so
Sorry, everybody.
yeah,
In
that's fine.
England. But thanks for listening. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to us. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. And then I will be
Bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused